Hello and welcome to another episode of the Empowering Leaders podcast. At Aleda, we are passionate about inspiring connections and creating a world of collaboration. Our signature program, Aleda Connect, curates groups of 5 to 6 leaders from diverse backgrounds in sport, industry, social venture, and the arts who come together to learn, to connect, and to collaborate.
I've probably had some of the most radical changes out of that leadership group. The significance of their work and how much it's really about helping others. It made me think, what else could I be doing? And I approached our owner, and within a few weeks we'd raised $5 million to try and solve obesity in the underprivileged community in Milwaukee. So that's one spark that leadership course has caused to contribute and leave the world as a better place.
It defines the word creativity for me. The ability to see connections where none seem to exist. And I think that's the magic of Aleda. Definitely not my usual, workshop panels like humanitarian spaces, but more of an intentional dissection of leadership.
The Empowering Leaders podcast is proudly brought to you by Victoria University, where cutting-edge sports and exercise science facilities like heat chambers, performance labs, and altitude environments mean VU is ranked 7th in the world for sports science. VU, uniquely you. As always, a big thank you to Jason Nicholas and his team at Temper Bedding, a mattress like no other. If you enjoy listening to the Empowering Leaders podcast, be sure to subscribe, and please, if you have a moment, we would love you to leave a review so we can reach more listeners and empower more leaders. If you ask anyone in the world of college basketball about Mike Brey, you'll hear a common theme. He's one of the most respected and most successful coaches of his generation. Mike inherited a program that had been absent from the NCAA Tournament for a decade and turned it into a perennial contender. His impact on the game is the stuff of legend. The all-time winningest coach in Notre Dame history, he guided the Irish to 13 NCAA Tournament appearances, 3 Sweet 16s, back-to-back Elite 8s, and a historic ACC championship. Across 23 seasons, his team played with a signature confidence, freedom, and resilience, an extension of the man that was leading them. Beyond the wins, Mike's impact extends far beyond the court. A mentor to countless players, a leader in the coaching community, he's helped raise millions for Coaches versus Cancer, served as president of the National Association of Basketball Coaches, and built a reputation as one of the most likeable figures in the game. After more than 2 decades leading Notre Dame, Mike has taken on a new challenge, joining the Atlanta Hawks coaching staff as an assistant coach in June 2023. Mike, they say you're the loosest coach in America and one of the finest basketball minds. Great to have you on the show today. Thank you.
Luke, it's great to be with you. I'm honored. And, you can be a lot looser when you're assistant now instead of a head coach. My blood pressure's a lot better as an assistant.
Hey, Mike, when I hear that back, it just sounds like a full life. When you hear all of your history read back to you, what's the feeling that comes to you?
I look and go, as I was listening to you, I'm flattered, and I have been one lucky dude. I've had great mentors, and I know we're going to get into that, and I've been able to get to some amazing programs and universities. And what's neat about this NBA experience is I was in the game 40 years, and I felt the last 2 years like it's professional development. I'm learning again because the NBA is a different style than college, and it's run differently. And I have been energized again to be learning about the game of basketball in year 45 in the game.
Well, I love that, Mike, and we might just go straight down to that road as a jumping off point. As you said, 45 years of history, and your reputation has an extraordinary history to it. But can you tell us a bit about the difference from coaching NBA professional athletes to the college athletes you spent your life with?
It's the question I got last year in my first year with the Hawks was, what's the biggest difference? The neat thing about the NBA, it's really all basketball. You are digging in. The college game here in the States is only 25% coaching the game, and the other 75% is recruiting and now raising money for name, image, and likeness, and being an ambassador for the university, which I enjoyed and I loved and respected at Notre Dame. But to dig into the game X and O wise, You're not recruiting. The front office is handling the acquisition of talent in the NBA. You're not raising money. The owner certainly has got plenty of money if he wants to spend it. And so it's from that point of view. The other side of it was, I don't know how many guys said, well, why would you want to coach in the NBA? And you hear this through the States, because those guys don't want to be coached. They've made all their money. They don't want to be coached. I have found that to be completely untrue. And I have been energized seeing our particular roster just want to be engaged. How can I be better? And this is their craft. This level of athlete has been kind of probably tracking toward this since 12 or 13 years old. I mean, they're very serious about their craft. And so I have found them to be amazingly receptive to coaching. And that old wives' tale that people say in the States, oh, they don't want to be coached. They got their money. Not true. Not true.
Well, nice to spell one of those rumors out off the top. And I want to dive back into your history. And you mentioned the great mentors you've had. Your story starts well before Notre Dame. You grew up in a family of elite athletes and educators, played college basketball at Northwestern State and George Washington. And you learned the game under the legendary Morgan Wooden at DeMatha. And it sounds like a pretty idyllic upbringing in the sport that you love. Can you go back and tell us a bit about all of that?
I was so fortunate when I think about my mentors, and I start with my parents, who were both educators. The dinner table talk was what they did in their class or with their teams. And a shout out to my mother, because she came to Melbourne, Australia in 1956 and swam for the U.S. Olympic team. And she was an Olympian in Melbourne. So Australia has always been very special in our family's heart, because Mom had pictures and videos of the training facilities were a lot different in 56, if you can imagine, Luke. I look at the videos sometimes and it was just amazing. But they were both educators and teachers and coaches. And what struck me was their students many times came up to me and would say, without my parents around, man, I love your mom. She's awesome, how she's helped me, or your dad's been great. And I was like, I want to do that. I want to have that impact on young people. And I think it started there in the home family of educators. I played for Morgan Wooten at DeMatha High School, who he's in the Hall of Fame, but he was truly an educator. Yes, he was a good basketball mind, but he was an educator. He was someone who helped young people grow. And I was so fortunate, Luke, that I played for him. And then when I finished playing at George Washington University, I came back and coached with him. And his selling point to me was, because I almost took a college graduate assistant job at GGW. And he said, you need to come back with me, because if you want to really do this, you need to have your own team. I'm going to give you the JV. And at 22, I had the junior varsity at DeMatha High School. I taught 6 classes of history. Catholic high schools, they wear you out. They don't pay you anything. We ran bingos on the weekend to raise money. The Catholics are unbelievable about how they can raise money. And I learned to work my backside off, helped him, and was there for 5 seasons before I went to Duke. So my DeMatha experience as a young person around Coach Wooten, and then as his right-hand man, he had an unbelievable effect on me. And he was truly an educator, a positive guy, an educator who made young people feel good about themselves.
And it sounds like, Mike, that's been a theme for you across your life. And I love these conversations, because often people can pinpoint they are lucky enough to have someone in their life like you described Coach Wooten as, or a great educator or a teacher that really was a sliding door moment, who just believed in them and invested in them. Has that been something you've been conscious of, the amount of young people that have come through your world, that you can really change someone's life?
Yeah, there's no question. I've been so lucky, starting as a high school educator, and of course, being around my parents who were high school educators. I've always felt, even though I was a college coach at a high-profile university, to kind of be that teacher and confidence-giving educator that I witnessed with my parents, and certainly with Coach Wooten. My mom used to have a saying, make them feel like $1 million. If you can do that with your young people, and I used to laugh at it, and I think back now, and it's really kind of how you've tried to work with young people and help them and help them to be more confident.
Well, it's interesting, Mike, isn't it? Because sometimes there's a reputation in sport, and I certainly grew up in an era where coaches were pretty hard and pretty, I would say mean-spirited at times, and you got abused. And if you could cope with that, that was a generation that we sort of grew up with here in Australia. But the term the loosest coach in America, but loose is really your calmness under pressure. And you see you on the sidelines, there's chaos going on everywhere, but you've got this calm, relaxed demeanor. Is that just you, or did you work on that?
Well, there's no question that sometimes you are having to fake that. Let's be honest, Luke. When it's hitting the fan during sometimes, or you've lost 3 in a row, and I was inside, you may be a lot different, but I always felt what I projected, was going to really affect my group and the crowd and the whole bit, and I think when I came into that, we were talking with the media after a game once, and uptight, and are you nervous? I said, and they were, it's a big game, or I said, look, I'm the loosest coach in America. Well, that thing ran. I mean, it went viral, and so I ran with it. There is no question that there's days I was extremely firm with my group. Probably behind closed doors. I never wanted to embarrass anyone in a setting of certainly a setting of 15,000 people and on ESPN. Never wanted a young person to be put in that spot, but you had some standards, and you had your firmness, and you had to show those days. And there were days where you knew you had to be a little edgy. And I would wake up that morning and go, son of a gun, it's one of those days. I'm going to have to do it. And 3:00 was practice, and I'd work myself up to it, and be a pain for maybe 30 minutes of a 2-hour practice and see if you could get a message. But I never let them leave on a bad note. I was always trying to find a way to end it positively and end it with hope, especially if you've lost a couple and young people are searching and we're all wondering and we're dying for a win. How do we leave them with some hope and some confidence and that type of thing? But yeah, the loosest coach thing is stuck, and what the heck, I run with it now.
The worst things to be known as, Mike. And I want to go back to your mum's wisdom. Make people feel like $1 million. And I love the opportunity to sit next to a legendary coach like you, so that is it for you, if you build all that confidence and you build all that trust, when you need to be hard, you've got a lot of equity in that relationship, and people are going to take that feedback a lot better because you've invested in them over the time. Is that sort of a way of framing the way you've gone about it?
Luke, you nailed it right there. If you invest in these young people and you've made them feel good about themselves, and you've found positive things, and you've connected with them on a personal level, and you know their family, and you know their mind, you know what's going on in their life, then when you do have to turn the screws and challenge them, I guess I kind of created an atmosphere where be good to them, positive to them, where they don't want to let you down, where they feel bad when they let you down. And you could show a little bit of, you kind of let me down tonight, fellas. And if you have established some leadership, and that can permeate through a locker room, and you have trust with your guys. And my assistant, I used to have assistants say, "You're too good to them. You're going too easy on them." I said, there's a bigger picture here. This is a long road. So I kind of, when I think back, guys, you're in a tough stretch, and some of your seniors or captains come by, before, "Hey, coach, man, we got to be better, man." Well, if you can get it coming from there, man, I think you're more than halfway there, with a group that has, I always used to say, I use the phrase, can you get a group to take ownership of itself? That is 85% of it. Can they take ownership of themselves? And I used to add on that phrase, and I use it at coaches' clinics now. Who's selling your stuff, coach? when you ain't around? Who's selling my stuff? Do I have the relationships with my senior captains who, when I ain't around or I leave the locker room and I've challenged them, they go, he's right, man. He's right. If they give it this one or roll their eyes, then we probably got a problem, but who's selling your stuff, and have you nurtured those relationships where those people can help take control in the ownership of a group?
And Mike, the evidence is there, the sustained success you enjoyed over a long period of time, and you voted the National Coach of the Year on a couple of occasions. In your words, and I suspect you're going to be too humble to delve too deeply, but putting all that together, what was the thing that enabled you to have that continued sustained success?
I think you have to have great energy every day. And then how do you pace yourself? I got better at it as I got a little more experienced as a head coach. How can I be at my best from 4 to 6 when we practice this afternoon? And, in a college job, you're putting out a lot of fires, you're recruiting, there's things you're doing maybe during the day. But when you get to 4 o'clock, you better be mentally ready. And there are days when you're thoroughly wiped out, exhausted, and maybe not in the best of places. But, buddy, you have to fake it. Those are the days you got to come out, and where they actually look at you like, how in the hell is he doing that today? Now, you go pass out as soon as they leave the gym. You can go pass out in your office. But when you're up in front of them and they're feeling you, and I always tried, it was interesting, your guys are stretching before. I always, 15 guys, it's easy to do, 12 guys really on a college team, bump every one of them while they're stretching. We have a 5-minute stretching. They're doing a thing. Jimmy, what's up? How we doing? How'd that test go today? Nothing bad. You good? You going to smile today? Or you going to play any defense today? Oh, coach, what are you talking? Just bump everybody before we get to the group huddle and we get into our stuff. Just kind of touching everybody up so that you have that personal thing. And that, that was always on my mind.
Yeah, brilliantly said. And that personal touch, it makes a lot of sense. Could you sum up your coaching philosophy in a few sentences? Is there a way to articulate it?
Yeah, and I'll give a Coach Morgan Wooten. We would work his basketball camp, and I was a little young to understand this, but he used the phrase, we were working with young people. He said, hey, be the kind of coach you'd want your own son and daughter to play for. And I thought to myself, my son played college football, my daughter played volleyball. And when I think, and I use that in coaching clinics now, and it hits home. You can tell when you say it, the high school educator coaches, like, be the kind of coach you want your own son and daughter to play for. And if you kind of start with that basis, I think you're going to handle young people the right way, find positive things, encouragement, those type of things. And that was a Morgan Wooten back in 1975. And I still hang on to it.
It's a great one-line statement, isn't it? Because it sums up so much, doesn't it? And I want to jump into, as you said, your kids go and play college sport and you get to see from the other angle. Tell us about your parenting style as someone who's lived that world. How did you allow them to have the space to achieve their dreams?
My son played college football at the University of Buffalo. He's a high school coach down in Florida now. And when he was growing up and he played BYO bad, he played everything. I just made a point to be really in the background, low key, sit at the top of the bleachers and not bring anything up unless he asked me. And certainly the great blessing was that he played football and I couldn't screw him up because I don't know football. But I've dealt with a lot of handling parents is part of it. In high school and certainly college, the parent situation is part of it. And I think I have a lot of experience with it, many very good ones, some that were nightmares, but you got to manage it because you're managing the young person. And one time I slipped into bad parent. So my son was a tight end, H-back blocking tight end. They never threw to him because he couldn't really run, but he could block his backside off. So one summer he's home and we're sitting there at dinner. I go, hey, Kyle, you ever talk to your like tight end coach that maybe they put you out in the flat? Now I'm going to be an expert, right? Now I'm going to be put you out in the flat and just pop it to you for a little 5-yard out. And he turns to me and goes, Dad, I got my scholarship because I block. Just shut up. And I go, lesson learned. I'm back in my right parent mode. I'm going to shut up. But even I creeped into that world. Yeah, why don't they throw to you a little bit? And he's like, Dad, I'm a blocker. That's the only time I'll ever play.
Isn't that a great story, Mike? And I love that you said the one moment that you slipped because, I'm going to be a little more blunt. I see crazy parents at junior sport
Yeah.
who do ridiculous things, and it makes me sad because I just see the impact it has on their kids, and they take away the joy of sport. Now, they're well-meaning, like you and I, and we love our sport and we love our kids, but you're so subtle, and I hope I've parented the same way with my 4. It's exactly how I've tried to. It's like, this is your life. You've got coaches, you've got people around you. I don't need to be your coach. I want to be your dad. I want to be in the background like you, sitting there and being supportive. But you just see the parents through what they think is being loving to their kids, but they're really micromanaging them. They're over the top. They're screaming from the sidelines. And it seems pretty destructive to me, Mike. I think it's a bit of an issue we've got that I don't know how to put the genie back in the bottle, but I think you probably answered it before.
It's really a problem, Luke. I mean, it's sad to see. And when I would be in the recruiting college circuit, the AAU circuit, and yeah, I know scholarships are on the line. Heck, now money's on the line with name, image, and likeness. So it's really an issue. But that story with my son, I would have parents, concerned parents. My son's not playing enough. My son's role, and when I would meet with them, I would use that story sometimes to kind of show how my son shut me down, just to kind of send a message indirectly to my players' parents. Like, even I had a big mouth and my son told me to shut up, because in a lot of ways, the young person, especially they're very uncomfortable when their parents get involved, and that was a dynamic, you had to manage. I know many times I'd have a player, we're talking and he said, well, Coach, my dad didn't call you, did he? I said, no. Now, I would never tell him the truth, unless it got really crazy. But my dad didn't call you, right? No. Now, this is me and you, man to man. He's 20-year-old college. I got to, deal with you. And that's really kind of a rule I set when I coached at Notre Dame. I'll talk to the parents about academics, if we have some issues, health, whatever, but we are not going to talk basketball with parents. I told my assistants, you diffuse the parents. And every now and then, just give them a call. Check in every 2 weeks. Now, you're going to get some lightning, probably, because I've been an assistant in college and got lightning from a parent after a game. And nobody hit me harder than Bobby Hurley's father a couple times. And he was starting every game from his freshman year on. So, but as the head coach, you got to have that layer of protection and really make it about the young person. And it's me and you. We're going to have to work this out.
Got to ask you about the deep involvement you've had, Coaches versus Cancer, and you've put enormous amount of your own energy and resources and time into something that's clearly inspired you to take action. Tell us about your passion for that.
Well, my dad had a malignant melanoma in the mid-90s when I was at the University of Delaware, and this Coaches versus Cancer program, which is sponsored by the National Association of Basketball Coaches here in the United States. That is the chosen charity. It got started back in the mid-90s, and so I jumped in on it at Delaware. We raised some really good money. The neat thing about the charity, 95% of the funds stay in your community. And so then when we went to Notre Dame, it really exploded. And the cool thing is, I think we raised enough money at Notre Dame, and the coach that replaced me, Mike Krzyzewski, has continued the charity, which is awesome. But it's sponsored 5 or 6 grants at the Harper Cancer Center on the Notre Dame campus, which was really cool. And as we know, cancer actually got a shot at kind of beating it up a little bit the last, 10, 15 years. The numbers say we may be able to win this thing. So let's keep doing it. But what it did also, it was certainly a great charity and a great, thing. But it got me involved in the community and seen in my community in a different way, not just the basketball coach at Delaware at Notre Dame. And I think that's really important in your community. These are your season ticket holders. These are your supporters. These are the people that when you have a tough season are either going to go, we got them or we don't got them. And, when they see you and you in a different light, other than just the coach, the more human side and get to know you, I think it's very powerful from that standpoint as well, not just the great deed of trying to kick cancer's ass,
It sort of leads me to another. Your whole world has been, you understand the coaching landscape. You're now in the incredibly competitive world of professional basketball, one of the most elite sports in the world, and the pressure that comes on from those stakeholders that it's unrealistic. You either win a championship or you fail, it seems, and you can go into the English Premier League or sports all around the world, and you've got these hyper media. You lose 3 games and you want to sack one of the great coaches of all time. What's your advice to coaches listening on that amount of stakeholder pressure that comes their way?
This is what I'd say to guys, and I'd see young guys on the road, or we'd meet for a game and are struggling, and they go into this and that. I said, hey, this still beats a real job. Remember, this still beats a real job. They're like, yeah, coach, you're right. Now, I had to remind myself many times, you lose 4 or 5 in a row in a South Bend, Indiana winter, it gets a little dark, and you could go to some dark places. But we're everybody's been well compensated in the coaching profession. And I use the phrase too, we all know what we signed up for. Like, we know what we signed up for now. This is high risk, high reward business. The highs are amazingly high. The lows can be amazingly low. Can you find a little bit of a midpoint and a balance point and keep it in perspective? And I think I got better at that as I got a little more experienced as a coach.
It's a great answer, isn't it? Always felt your worst day as a professional athlete is probably someone's best day. Even when you're injured, you're in the gym, you're surrounded by community and great. The perspective is not always an easy thing to see, but when you can, it changes your life.
We all are born different. As we grow, the experiences we have develop into outlooks uniquely our own, charting our life's course. No one sees an idea, opinion, or opportunity like you. And no one sees you like VU. Victoria University. Uniquely you.
At Aleda, our signature program, Aleda Connect, is something we're really passionate and proud of. We bring together groups of 5 to 6 people around the globe from diverse backgrounds, sport, industry, social venture, and the arts, who come together to learn, to connect, and to collaborate.
The Aleda Connect experience for me has been transformational. I met people that I would never have met from totally different spheres. It's very basic. It's all about relationships. It's all about how we communicate. And what the Aleda Connect group does that is so powerful is when you bring 2 people from 2 totally different worlds together, there's no ego. It just leaves room for the real you. And I think that's what Aleda gave me, was bringing back the real me and really connecting to my own leadership style.
But I've got to delve into a young athlete under your care at the moment at the Hawks, a young Australian by the name of Dyson Daniels, who's having a great season and making a big impact. Tell us a bit about him.
You mean the Great Barrier Thief, as he has been dubbed here in the United States? And I know you have a connection to the family, and he has been, first of all, if he doesn't get Defensive Player of the Year, I'm going to go on a major protest, to the NBA offices in New York. But he has been, for a young player, a young prospect, he's kind of found himself here. I think Quinn Snyder's done a fabulous job with his psyche and getting him more confident. And what he's doing defensively, I'll say this, Luke, and you probably saw it over there as a young player. I have been around this game 45 years. I've never seen a player with the defensive instincts to get a hand on a ball, anticipate a steal. You can't teach it. There's no way. And he comes up with, he's averaging 3 a game, which leads the NBA. But he'll come, and the assistant that sits next to him, we just look at each other and go, "Are you kidding me? Like, that's unbelievable." And he's done it at crunch time many times. Now he's become a more aggressive and comfortable offensive player. He's scoring. He's shooting that floater that I think has front spin on it. That must be an Australian rules football kind of fundamental. And, so when I dap him up, when he loves golf, as you know, he loves to play golf. So we always dap up with the golf grip before the game. I always hit him with the golf grip, and that's my way of kind of trying to loosen him up. Even though the man is so steady, he shows he just is right there, physically durable. I have been so impressed, and you think about the future of the Hawks with a rock solid player person. He's going to eventually become a voice and a leader. And I just, you got to be awfully proud. I mean, watching him, it's an amazing story. And I saw, when I was an assistant coach at Duke University, I saw his dad play in high school. That's how far we go back.
What a great story. And saw him as a 12-year-old. He was a beautiful athlete then, and it's great to see. And what a way to endear yourself to your teammates by being one of the great defensive players and doing the team things. Mike, I love asking these sets of questions to people with your wisdom and history and these patterns of leadership that we're a bit obsessed about in the world of a leader. We start with this idea of self-leadership. Is there one thing that's always worked for you as a leader that you would never change?
Being always accessible for your players. My door was always open in the office, and I told my administrative assistant, if I'm on the phone or I'm in something and a player happens to walk into the offices, stop me and channel him through. And it may be 30 seconds. Hey, what's up? How was class? Test, whatever. Oh, by the way, today, defensively, just get a little plug in, pick and roll defense. We're going to just how's mom? How's your brother doing? Did he play last night? Something touching them when they come through and having that personal touch. And then, can you be humble and they feel it's about them? And, I never wanted to be on the media guide. They used to they don't do it anymore. They're all online, but they used to print these big old media guides. And as well, coach, this year we want you with the captains. I don't want to be on that. No. Have them on there. Can you have, even at press conferences when it'd be the coach and 2 players, they would ask me a question, and I a lot of times would turn to Pat, what do you think? And have them be the spokesman so they feel like, man, he wants us to be unselfish. He's amazingly, coach is unselfish, man. We would fly in the NCAA tournament. We would charter bigger planes. There was a first class section. Players always sat up there. I'm in the back, man. I'm always no, coach. There's an extra one. Nope. You got it. Put the senior manager up there. You go in to eat last. There's a great book entitled Leaders Eat Last. Stand in the back. We'll get there. Let everybody, just so they kind of feel, it's them. It's not about you, and that they know you really got their back when they've been punched, and that you can say in front of them and to the media, fellas, I screwed up. I should have helped you more tonight. We got to do these 3 things better. But I screwed up with that, and we're going to address that tomorrow. And and not I coach good, they play bad. I mean, when you get into that, buddy, you're going to lose them.
I love the pattern of that, Mike, and you describe it in such a brilliant way. But leaders that take accountability together or put their hand up if it didn't go right, and also that common thing around that genuine, authentic care for people in whatever discipline. It seems something you've been brilliant at for 45 years. How do you fill your own cup up, Mike, to make sure that you can lead others the way you want to?
Who was it? Tony Blair was on thing that CNN did about 5 years ago. It was a leadership thing. And he said, most leaders don't take or make the time for creative thought, because when you're running the thing, it's coming at you so fast, and you can get caught up in the little things and the minutia and things that hopefully you can learn to delegate. But where do you get away to kind of think creatively? Mine has been swimming. My mom, she tried to make a swimmer out of me. Great story, Luke. She caught me sneaking out of swimming practice when I was 10 years old, and I begged her to go to basketball camp, and the rest is history. And I was sneaking out. I was like, Mom, I'm not. Now, my sister swam, and she was an All-American at LSU, but there was no way I was doing that like her.
But now you do it to relax.
Yeah, now I do it, and what I loved it, because I would swim in the morning when I was at Notre Dame, and I could. You know what's great when your head's underwater? No one can talk to you. Nobody can talk to you. Nobody can interrupt you. And I would swim for 30 minutes, and I would think about my day, practice plan, this, who do I touch? And so that was kind of not only get your cardio, your physical stuff, but it was my mental stuff too. So that was a nice routine when I was a head coach. I would always go to breakfast by myself. I had a spot I would go. I didn't want to. I would sit in a corner. They kind of would hide me out in this one restaurant in South Bend. I got a few here in Atlanta, and you could kind of think a little bit and get your day organized.
Mike, can you tell a story of a visionary leader that inspired you to follow their vision?
I was so lucky with Morgan Wooten, and then I did 8 years with Mike Krzyzewski. And that was, such a master class in leadership and preparation. And one of the phrases that I think I picked up many, but the one theme was, as a college coach, you're running your program, we got to compete every day. And you may be competing more in May and August in recruiting or what you're doing than during the season. Just wake up ready to compete every day. And, that was a theme and that Mike K, I think, really instilled in it. He lived it. And I think as young assistants, and there were many of us that came through and went on, Quinn Snyder being one of them as well. And you kind of learned how to really think about in the morning, what are we doing today to get better? And it's May. It's not a practice day. What are we doing today? Are we doing it in recruiting? Are we doing it in marketing? Are we doing it as we sit down and talk about our attack against a zone defense, and that was a great vibe for me to be around as an assistant for 8 years.
Mike, you mentioned Tony Blair and carving out time for creativity, and we see inherently curious people have success like yours. How do you find time to fill that curiosity cup up for yourself?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, the last 2 years, what's been great is the NBA has been such a new world. I was a college coach for 35 years. And then to go to the NBA, and I watched the NBA, but I never really dug into it. I would watch the playoffs after our season. But now you have different coaches, different styles of play philosophically, 24-second shot clock. The rules are different. The game is 48 minutes, not 40 like in college. And it was almost in a way like a different sport. And it was energizing on a daily basis. Okay, we got Charlotte tonight. What do they do? What's this coach known for? I knew that in the ACC. I knew you got to know the guys and how they played and that what their style of play was. So that has been like amazingly refreshing to learn. The neat aspect of being in the NBA is the players. I saw most of these guys. You talked about seeing Dyson when he was 12. I saw these guys when they were 13 and 14 playing on the AAU circuit. I recruited many of them. I have like a reference point with them, and I'll say, hey, I remember when you played in the Peach Jam, which is a big Nike tournament in Georgia. I remember seeing you in the Coach, you saw us down there? I said, oh, yeah. I saw you guys play against that team from New Jersey. You were rolling that night. You saw that, didn't you, Coach? You remember that? And so it's been really, for me, I've been able to connect with these guys. And then when we play, our opponents, the guys will come up after the game. Jalen Brunson, the Knicks beat us at like the buzzer, and I'm walking off, and Jalen Brunson comes over. He was a Chicago kid who we didn't get. We tried to get. He went to Villanova. He comes, Coach, how you doing, man? I said, Jalen, I'm so proud of you. And, so that's been really kind of cool to see them as men now and what they've become when I saw them when they were 14 or 15 years old.
Mike, we've got this small obsession with the idea of collaboration when you put great people together, and the sum of that knowledge becomes often a fascinating thing to watch. Have you got an example of a great collaboration in your life?
And maybe more so, and I can't think of a specific one off the top of my head, but just the theme of, it's been interesting for me because I was a head coach for 30 years, and now I'm assistant again. And, learning that role of being supportive of the leader. I tell people I'm a listener. I'm a great listener I've got a young staff, and I just want to listen a lot of times. And maybe I'll come back the next day with the young assistant who said, I think this, and even with the head coach, Quinn, who I coached at Duke. When I was an assistant at Duke in the late 80s, he was the point guard. I was the mediator between Mike Krzyzewski and 20-year-old Quinn Snyder. I was 27 at the time. And it's funny how our relationship now, 40 years later, sometimes I'm mediating between him and a player, just like I did back in the day. So it's kind of been full circle. But knowing, I think especially as an assistant, being secure and doing it for the group and not worrying about whose idea it was or who gets the credit. And I think that's something that kind of had to go step back into that role. But luckily I did it before for 8 years as an assistant at Duke, for 5 years as an assistant with Morgan Wooten at DeMatha. So it was kind of comfortable to get back in it.
Mike, do you have a mantra when it comes to communication in your leadership roles?
Mentor-wise, it's sad. Coach Wooten passed, a while ago, and he was such a great guy to bounce things off of. I still communicate with Mike Krzyzewski, and it's interesting because Mike had Quinn and I both, so there's a little bit of a connection there as far as communication and thinking it through and venting. And then, there's some guys that I coached against in college that I still stay in touch with. Tom Izzo at Michigan State, and we banged head. You share stuff in the off season, you bounce things off of people, and they'll call and go, "Hey, what are you guys running?" Or I'll watch something. And so you still have that the network. Most of my network are college guys. I'm still early in the NBA thing, but a lot of those college guys are veteran dudes who've seen it all. And I mentioned Izzo, but a Bill Self and a John Calipari and a Jay Wright, who coached at Villanova, is now retired. Those were kind of my era of guys. And I think we still kind of share things at times and vent at times too.
Mike, who's been the greatest leader in your life?
Well, you know what? I would have to say, I would have to say my parents. And probably I look at my mom, who somehow got into women's swimming in the 1950s when there was no opportunity for women's sports. My grandfather, to have the wherewithal, he sent her to New York from the coal country of Pennsylvania, and she swam at the YMCA in Manhattan and took the train all the way back. And, she was an unbelievable inspiration. And it was always a tough act to follow because whatever I achieved, she was an Olympian, and I dang sure never got close to that. And, that's a tough act to follow when your mom was an Olympian and an All-American. And then she was the great dynamic, which was really neat, Luke. When I was at GW finishing, she was the women's swimming coach. And so I'd go by her office and, then she'd come watch us play and watch practice. And so I got my undergrad degree in '82, and she got her master's. I couldn't even have graduation day. I had to share that with her. She got her master's. I mean, it's unbelievable, but an amazingly intense, competitive. I mean, you don't get where she got. And just seeing her edge and her game day, and she swam masters till she was like 70 and was pissed off at her times, and she knew who she had to beat. I'm like, Mom, just calm down. But she created a monster. I think I blame her. I blame her for some of my issues.
Well, it's a great story. I love I'm sitting in Melbourne, Australia now, and I know the 1956 Olympic pool very well. It's the old glass house that's now home base for the biggest sporting club in Australia, and the Melbourne Cricket Ground, where she would have walked around as an athlete in 1956. We think is a bit of the mecca for sport here in Australia,
Yeah.
and to think your mum, and to understand what it would have been like, as you said, for a young woman in the 1950s to pursue a sport. I don't think people in 2025 could really understand how big a hurdle she had to overcome. It's a remarkable story. I love hearing all about it.
My latest mission is, so she was a butterflyer, and she swam butterfly in the 50s when it became the fourth stroke. There were only 3 strokes for a while. So her and an East German woman were breaking each other's world records, because it was but she didn't qualify to swim it in Melbourne. So she swam the freestyle relay. And so she swam all the preliminary events, but not the final. They won the silver. In 1970, they said, moving forward, anyone who swims the preliminary events gets a medal, even if they don't swim the final. Well, my mom is on a list of about 170 athletes from all kinds of countries who didn't get their medal. And to her dying day, she was pissed off that she didn't get that medal. And I have been working USA Swimming, and my sister and I, like, if we can someday get that medal.
Well, let's put that out into the ether now. If anyone deserves that for a life of contribution, and I love that you and your sister are still fighting hard for that. Final question, Mike, and it's been a great pleasure to spend some time with you. But we are, as I said, a bit obsessed in our Aleda world about collaboration, and to hear your wisdom today is something to celebrate as well. Has there been anyone in the world you've got to connect with incredible people right across your working life? God, I'd love to have collaborated with that coach or someone else in another passion of your life.
Yeah.
Is there a name that springs to mind?
Yeah, we were talking, I was watching some NFL stuff earlier today, and I don't know him well, but John Harbaugh would be a guy I'd love to spend some time with. His daughter actually played lacrosse at Notre Dame, and I just missed on some of the weekends when he would come into town. But to have a beer with him, or any kind of, I just love his style. And he's been there and he's been doing it, and he never panics, and he's just always poised. He's one of those guys. I love watching the Ravens play. Certainly they're a good team, and then I watch his press conferences and his message, and I'm like, you know what, that I'd like to hang out with him.
That would be a fun night at the bar having a beer, and I'm sure there'll be some great wisdom shared. Mike, I know the schedule of your life is full on as an NBA coach. So I really appreciate you giving us some time and sharing your life history. I've loved every minute of it. Really appreciate you joining me.
Well, Luke, it was an honor to be with you, and I will tell Dyson Daniels tomorrow at our shoot around. We got the Clippers tomorrow night. We've won 4 in a row, but I'm going to tell him I hung out with you. And I do give him, when he makes a 3, I do give him the Australian rules football official thing sometimes. And he goes, "Where did you see that, Coach?" I said, "I saw that a couple years ago. Those guys are dressed so good, and they give the goal. I love it."
It was he and my son, who plays sport for a living here in Australia. We're in a junior state team together, and my son's an obsessed golfer, and they've remained friends. So he'll know Sam. We're on the sidelines. It's a great thing to watch young people fulfill their dream, isn't it? So he's in good hands having you on the sidelines. So thanks again, Mike. Great to see you.
Great to be with you, Luke. Take care.